Howdy, and welcome to episode 103 of In the Rabbit Hole's Urban Survival Podcast. In this episode, we go on the road and go unfiltered. We're your hosts, Aaron
and Jonathan.
And you are in the rabbit hole, safe and sound. Okay, so you're going to notice that the sound today is not the normal In the Rabbit Hole studio sound, and that is because I am in Austin right now, sitting face-to-face with Jonathan, which we haven't actually gotten a chance to do in a long time.
The way we used to do it.
The way we used to do it. Old school Rabbit Hole,
Exactly.
except we're doing it off a little USB mic that picks up every single noise in a room, even the stuff your ears don't hear, unfortunately. So.
Which is weird. The $79 USB mic picks up more than the...
Well, that's the not to get into a show about microphones, but that's I learned way more about microphones than I ever wanted to know when we started doing the show, and it is amazing the patterns and the different kinds of microphones and what they pick up and what they don't pick up and how really expensive they get very quickly. I know, like, just for argument's sake, and then we'll actually jump onto the real topic of the show today. Like the Rode Podcaster Pro that I actually used in the studio, which was like a $350-$400 microphone or something like that, but it has this really shallow, really tight pattern that it is amazing how much noise can be going on in the studio, and that microphone will only pick up my voice and not everything else, which was, and then I've got other microphones that have a very long but very narrow reach and all kinds of interesting things with that. But this is not a podcast about
survival microphones.
Survival microphones. How to kill a zombie. Which microphone is best?
Although this meteor is pretty heavy. So
the meteor is pretty heavy. Although it does look like some kind of futuristic weird vibrator. But
I wasn't going to say that.
I was, just because it's going to be that kind of show today. Because we're going to have a gun show.
And we're kind of ornery today.
We are. We're in Austin. We've been up to mischief, although as much mischief as two gentlemen in our...
We're getting old.
We are getting old. It's very sad. Like, we even called it an early night.
I didn't tell you my old story, though, and I'm going to tell it because y'all have no choice but to listen. So I'm walking down the stairs a few days ago, and clearly I'm getting old because I twisted my knee.
You twisted your knee?
Yes, like, it shouldn't go right-left.
No,
it's back-forth.
Yeah. I mean, it should have a little play in there.
This went more than a little, and I still feel it. Like, one thing I noticed is my left knee I'm not aware of, like on a regular, but, it's there.
Yeah.
But you don't think about it.
Yeah.
I am oddly aware of my right knee now, and this was all because I walked down the stairs. So clearly 37 is not going to be a good year for me.
Apparently you're decaying more quickly than you should.
Yeah.
You should take some vitamins or something.
I guess. So that's my aging story for the day. Maybe a V8.
Maybe a V8. So we are going to have a gun show today. I think it's going to be a whole bunch of random topics about guns, which is always fun. And I do have to come clean about a sin. Which is, while we were on break, I put my SIG in the safe, my beautiful, wonderful, custom-shopped, custom-worked-on SIG, put it in the safe, and bought a Glock. I know.
I was tempted not to basically rescind your invitation to Austin.
I appreciate that. I will have to say, now, I did... actually, we've been jokingly using this expression all weekend, which is assumption without evidence.
Yes.
And my assumptions about... Glocks were all just that.
Glock's a nice pistol. So for those of you who have them, I have no issue with Glock. I just don't like them myself.
When they first kind of started to become popular, I thought, it's a plastic gun. I mean, that's just dumb. And, these, what are they, disposable guns? They're really not. I mean, they are. I mean, over the years, as they've more about them, and obviously there's an almost cult following around Glocks and stuff, but... I resisted for a very long time, and I think it mainly just came down to my SIG is really freaking heavy.
Yes.
And having to carry concealed in Texas heat, even if you're just walking outside for a moment in Houston, where it's like 90% humidity and 100 frickin' degrees, it's in some days even 110 on really bad days. It just gets to the point where it's just ridiculous. And it was, okay, stop carrying a gun because I'm so uncomfortable. Or do something about it and choose a gun that is much lighter and that by sweating all over it, I'm not actually worried that I'm going to corrode any of the more delicate parts of the gun, which was actually happening to my SIG. I was having to break down my SIG as far as I was going to break it down and blow it out and clean it often, and I would find rust on things I didn't want rust, and then I'd have to take it in like every so often to really have the gun taken apart and really cleaned properly to get my just body oils and other things out of the gun.
Yep. No, I hear you. And in the summer, that's why I carry a different gun too. I mean, I don't. When it's cooler out, I'm either a Browning high power or a Commander size 1911.
Yeah.
And you know that. I mean, I'm a fan of those single action safety type pistols, cocked and locked.
Yeah.
But in the summertime, it's all about a Smith & Wesson 642.
Yeah.
For me.
I actually did get rid of my 642 recently. I just never really fell in love with the gun. But we'll get more into that in a little while because we are going to actually talk about buying and selling guns.
And just one more thing before we get too deep into guns. For all of our Texas listeners who don't know this, I just want to point out that as of September 1st, it is legal in the state of Texas, although we don't have an overriding state law. There is some local laws that you have to pay attention to.
Like San Antonio.
Like in San Antonio. But, and I'll get into that in a second, but the thing is, it is now, and wait for it, it is now legal to carry what is defined as a switchblade, or an automatic knife. You still can't carry some other things, no dirks, daggers. Look into the law. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not giving you advice. But there's a bunch of things you still can't carry. But an automatic opening knife, and yes, I've got one on me right now, just because I'm so happy. I don't even know why I'm happy, people. I just am.
Well, it's another liberty returned back to you.
Yes, it is. But to Aaron's point about San Antonio, do not carry a knife that is locking of any kind into San Antonio.
Yeah, if you're going to go through San Antonio and you're not from San Antonio or aware of the law, you should look into it carefully. Because even just driving through San Antonio to go to New Mexico one time, there was everybody just, because none of us carry a blade that is not locking.
Right. I don't even think I own a blade that's not locking.
Yeah. So I do, but it's a very old pocket knife that I never.
I own an old case.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Slip joint knife. But San Antonio has a lot of extra rules. If you're in Texas, if you plan to go to San Antonio or around San Antonio, go look them up. But for the rest of us, switchblades are now legal.
Which is freaking awesome. I'm not going to buy one.
No. And I didn't buy mine either. It was a gift.
Yeah,
so it's a gift I can now actually carry, which is
and that is
cool.
neat. I mean, it's always nice to hear when a liberty is returned.
Right.
When going back to assumption versus evidence,
right?
That you cannot hurt someone more quickly or more severely,
right?
Because of the manner of the opening of knife.
Now, of course, as that liberty is being returned on a federal level, we can take a look at the ATF reviewing trust rules around.
Yeah, I think that is going to be one of the bigger topics of today's show, which we can get into in a minute.
Yep.
But I think as far as the going back to the Glock, I think that is really important. That's one of the things we've talked in the last few times we've done gun shows, which is that if the gun that you're carrying is not comfortable, you're not going to carry it. And I really did get to the point where I was getting to the office and I was starting to take my gun off and sit it on. It was just freaking uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And while there is nothing wrong with Glocks, and I think they're just fine, I do still prefer the look and feel and actually the performance of my SIG better. But for a daily carry, for a gun that if I drop it or scuff it or scratch it or sweat all over it, seriously, when I sweat all over this Glock, I am actually more concerned about, I should probably remove all the ammo out of the magazine and wipe it down than I am anything to do with the gun.
Yeah, no, I can totally see that. It is, Glock to me makes a great utility pistol.
Yes.
It's and nobody get on me about this, but it's kind of like the AR. The AR is a fantastic utility rifle. It is not the rifle I would go to if I wanted to shoot the most amazing grouping in the world.
Yeah.
It is not the rifle that I would go to if I wanted the ultimate in whatever reliability there may be. Mm-hmm. And I don't even know what that means, but whatever it might be. It is not the rifle that I would go to take the longest shot. There's a lot of things I wouldn't do to it. On the other hand, if I needed a general purpose rifle that I can trust to work 99 point whatever % of the time,
right,
it is a fantastic rifle. And we were talking a little bit about that too, and the whole idea of picking ARs, so we can go into that later in the show. Just to give you all the highlights. But I think that, to me, the Glock is a great utility pistol. And we have that with a lot of things. Like, I've got utility style, like knives that I wouldn't mind losing. Like really using. You know, I think both of us at some point or another spent too much on a knife that we really like to know we own, but you've never put in your pocket. And I think a lot of you probably listening have done that before too. Or that amazing knife, that outdoors knife that was way too expensive that you're like, oh, I'm never going to take this camping. What if I forget it?
And you know, I ran into that with when I got a knife, I commissioned a knife from Phil Rose, the custom knife maker. But he has, I think his tagline or whatever is "No safe queens," and he gets very offended if somebody buys one of his knives. And these are, I mean, you're talking about a $500 plus knife.
Oh, I'd get offended.
And it's like, and his point was, I make these things for people to use them. If you don't use mine, if you're not going to use my knife, please don't buy it, because I don't want people that are just collecting knives to use it. But it is hard. You pay that much money for a knife, and you're like, yes, I paid that much money for a knife that really was well designed for this purpose, and it is bulletproof.
But I don't want to lose it.
Or I don't want to damage it.
Even if you know you won't, it's still that idea of what if I did? How much would that just annoy me to no end on my ride home?
And I mean, that's kind of my SIG. That's kind of how I feel about that. And a lot of it was just like, I don't want to keep sweating on this gun, and I don't want to worry about having to replace parts on this gun or having parts repolished out on this gun, because I'm not, although I really enjoyed the work that the gunsmith Teddy Jacobs did on the gun, Teddy's kind of nuts, and I don't want to have to go back and deal with his mood swings.
You don't want to do it again.
Exactly.
I totally, I get that completely, and that's why I love the idea of, I love the idea of the Glock. I just, kind of like you were saying, if you're not comfortable with something, it's more than just carry. So for me, it's, I don't like shooting the Glock. There's just something about it that I don't like the feel at all.
Now, now that's an interesting question, because I know you had that baby Glock that we all agreed was an absolute piece of crap.
That one...
It wasn't a piece of crap. It was just incredibly uncomfortable to shoot.
Yeah, it was very uncomfortable to shoot. I'd rather shoot a snub-nose 357 Magnum. I'd rather shoot a snub-nose 44 Magnum.
What was it? It was like the Baby 40?
I had the Baby 40, the Ultra Baby 40. It was real small, and it was a early generation version of it. And it was extremely, for lack of a better word, snappy. I mean, it had tons of muzzle flip. It wasn't a recoil issue. I mean, neither one of us are small guys, so it's not that. Just it's more of how it felt in my hand as I shot it, and I just didn't like it. And so that gun's been gone for a long time. I sold that a long time ago.
Which, and I think that is, that gets back to it. Like, that gun is intended for an absolute, backup. But at the same time, if you are not an officer or any kind of law enforcement officer, most likely you're not carrying two guns.
And if you're not practicing with it, it loses its practicality.
Like we were joking around earlier this morning about there were some gunshots not too far from your house where there's 5 shots, and two drug addicts got in a gunfight with each other, and only out of 5 shots, only one guy hit the other guy in the ass.
And the other one all ended up into in a wall, which is better than where it could have ended up.
And they were only a few feet apart.
They were really close to each other, literally across, less than across a room, probably the equivalent of maybe 4 feet away. And 5 shots fired, 1 shot hit, and it hit the other guy in the ass. And apparently they were arguing over how to split the drugs that they'd bought together. Bizarre story. It was on the local news. And, it's just one of those things where, without training... Now, I don't know what those guys were on. But without training, what's the point? And if I don't like shooting it at all? So for me, a good small-size gun, and I really do like a 1911. Problem with those is, again, you end up with that safe queen thing where so many of those 1911s, I would love to get a Nighthawk.
So expensive so fast.
Like a Nighthawk T3, which to me is a perfect size for a carry weapon, the whole bit. I can't afford it.
Well, I remember you petting it for a while in the gun
it was nearly $3,000.
Actually, I think it was over $3,000.
I think that one was nearly, but it might have been a used one that I was looking at. But yes, I think the new ones are now $3,200. I've seen there's a T4, which is a 9mm, super thin, 1911 style. It's kind of like a mix between a 1911 and a Browning high power.
Interesting.
And I want one of those, and then I saw the price tag of that, and I thought, no.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that as far as that often does come up, and as far as what is a reasonable price to pay for a gun, and I guess one, it's relative. Like we were joking around last night about there was some billionaire you knew or something, and he was paying like to us what would seem like a ridiculous amount of money, but if you put it in the perspective of his total worth versus our total worth, it was like, okay, that actually, all right, I see where that would not be just stupid to do. I mean,
exactly.
Maybe not the best use of that much money, but to that person, the pain level of parting with that much money is not there like it would be with us.
I mean, yeah, it becomes a percentage of total wealth, and then who cares?
Yeah.
But when I look, so guns, we were talking earlier, so making the show useful to somebody who might be looking for some guns and or looking to purchase their next gun, we were kind of talking about, what's a reasonable amount. I had somebody ask me a couple, not long ago, I guess it was about 2 months ago, just ask me to me it seemed like a bizarre question, but I guess it is kind of reasonable. If I were looking at a gun, what's the price range that I'm looking at? And their point was that they went into a gun store and saw $200 guns, and they saw $3,000 guns, and they didn't know where they should be looking. And it's my view is you don't need to be looking at $3,000, but you also probably shouldn't be looking at a $200 gun if that's your carry weapon.
For a handgun.
Right. If it's a 22 plinker that you're going to use on a farm somewhere, hey, whatever.
Yeah.
If it's a...
Well, even as long as we're sticking in the realm of like handguns. Just
right. Because like a Walther P22 plinking gun, and to me that is like a neat little toy. It is not... I don't think guns are toys, and I know none of you think that, but... The idea is it is a gun you use recreationally and purely recreationally. And to me, at that point, I think they're about $300.
Yeah.
Sometimes a little less, sometimes a little more, depending on the options, but about $300. That seems reasonable as a recreational gun. But if you're looking at a gun that is defensive and potentially one that you're going to risk, you're putting it's coming out because your life is on the line. And I think what we came up with, or what I told her is, look, you can get a Glock in the 600s.
You can even get, I think, if you're looking on Gunbroker, which we'll talk about Gunbroker a little bit, actually, you'll start for even a new Glock and even used. With Glocks, you're not going to save that much by used, which is a little unusual. But you're usually looking in the $500 range.
Okay, so 500s, and then my view was for this particular person who is new to the whole thing.
Right.
Really, anything more than $1,000, and you're into the more esoteric category.
Right, more than $1,000, and you're buying a weapon that is either finely tuned for somebody that really knows what they're doing, or it's a showpiece.
Exactly, and so I guess my view is for anybody listening or who's curious about what I view as a good utility range, it probably is between that $500 and $1,000 range.
Yeah.
And I recognize that is a wide range. But that said, a brand new Browning high power is going to run you towards the $1,000. A brand new SIG will run you towards the $1,000. Brand new Glock will be towards the bottom of that range.
And then H&Ks are usually
H&Ks will be the 800 to 1,000.
Yeah.
You can get a Springfield 1911 in the 800 to 1,000 range. So there's a lot of guns in there, and it gives you the opportunity to see what's right for you.
Yeah.
Because, again, we can't tell you what to carry, but I will tell you, don't ever decide you're going to buy a carry weapon because it's cheap.
Yeah, that's... so I guess it's like anything else in life. If you're going to bet your life on something's functionality, don't cheap out on your own life.
Yeah, and for something like that where you're really... And some of you might be like, well, that is a lot of money. But my view is over the course of the lifetime of a gun, a firearm, even $1,000, firearms last a long time.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking firearms, and this almost even bleeds into buying a topic of buying used guns. But I think one thing that people don't often get is, unless you did really buy a piece of crap, or you're talking about changing out springs or more delicate parts of guns or something, the guns really are intended to last multi-generational.
Oh, yeah. My father has guns that he bought in the 70s that I now have that are fantastic firearms. I mean, I have a 1911 Combat Elite full-size that it's never had a failure.
Yeah.
It's never had a failure to feed. Now, you're right. There are things that I've had to swap out. Springs tend to be the one area that you do have to swap out. But this gun's actually, and I've had it checked. So, I mean, even checked with a micrometer. The firing pin in it is still in great condition, and it's fired more shot. Now, I have a spare for it in case it needs to be changed out.
Or a zombie apocalypse.
Yeah. And 1911 parts are so easy to come by.
Right.
But the firing pin and the ejector have both been checked, and they're the original parts.
Are they really?
Yeah, and they are still working beautifully.
I think, and even starting to go into the discussion about buying new versus used, actually, unless it was something that was just new to the market,
right?
And even though I'm always kind of a little leery about first generation anything, especially with guns, but guns and computers, but I won't buy a brand new gun anymore. I mean, unless I was having something custom made for me. And then we're talking about something different, and then we're really not talking about a gun to begin with, because I'm not a 1911 guy. Right. I don't have anything against them, but I also don't have. I can appreciate the artistry that goes into a lot of them. And there's who was it? We knew someone at some point that had several custom made 1911s that were absolutely gorgeous pieces of work. But again, we were going back to guns that were in the $3,500 range, and I was like, I don't have a need for a gun that is that pretty, that costs that much, that doesn't shoot any better than, say, my SIG. But going into, I just don't usually see the point in buying a new gun anymore, and I don't buy new guns anymore. I take that back. The Glock I bought was brand new.
Yeah, and I've bought some new ones. I've bought used ones.
Yeah. I'll buy new if the price difference, if somebody is making a good enough deal on the price that it doesn't make any sense for me to buy used. Now, what I'll do with the SIGs is, even the SIG that was my daily carry, and will be my daily carry again when it gets cool out. Right. But that was, first of all, that was a hard SIG to find, because it's the SAS custom, and it was a two-tone and all this other stuff, and it was in a 357 SIG. So at that time, it was a difficult gun to find. Actually, I think it's still kind of a difficult gun to find. But what I like as far as buying used guns is, especially since I primarily buy SIG, are the
certified pre-owned.
Yeah, the certified pre-owned. It's just like a freaking car.
Yeah, and for those of you who haven't seen it, there's a fantastic Aston Martin ad. You may not be the first, but do you really care? And for those of you that are curious, just go Google Aston Martin ad. You may not be the first.
Yes.
And you can see what I mean.
If you are offended by nudity in any way, shape, or
don't
form,
look.
Or even implied nudity, do not go look. We'll give you that warning.
That's
it's probably
warning.
not work safe. There you go.
It is not safe for work.
A polite warning, but
it is a real Aston Martin ad.
Yeah. And I feel the same way about the SIG certified pre-owns. And I mean, it's the few SIGs that I bought that way, when I got them, they were like brand new. Anything that was wrong, they reconditioned.
SIG has done a fantastic job with that, and I think they've probably, out of all of them, I think they've done the best job with that.
Yeah.
Here's an interesting fact about used guns, though, that people may not know. I have never bought a gun used that I think is heavily used. It's just because I am not a good enough gunsmith kind of person to be able to spot all the little timing things that you need to look for and all that. On the other hand, something I have found that I think is really interesting is the number of extremely lightly used guns on the market. Well, I've shot it once and I didn't like it. I actually bought a quote-unquote used Smith & Wesson 44 Magnum snub-nose revolver that clearly the person who shot it once and said, I don't like the 44 Magnum, and sold it. I mean, and when I say that, I literally mean, so I know the people that I bought it from, the shop that I bought it from, and I've been dealing with them for a long time, and they were very honest with me about the whole thing. You know, the guy bought it, and the next day came back and was like, I don't like this thing. Yeah. I mean, he literally bought it, went to the range, I'm guessing put maybe 6 rounds through it, and that might be an extreme, and that was it. He was done.
Yeah, and I think, no, the recording's fine. I was just checking, I was switching a setting to see the time.
So it was a lightly used, and I guess the point of that is, I don't understand. I understand how revolver timing and all that stuff works, but I'm not good enough at checking timing and things like that I can tell you something's awesome. But again, buying from a reputable dealer, and Aaron will talk a little bit more about Gunbroker too. But buying from a reputable dealer is how I found buying used to work out really well for me. And then buying lightly used works out really, really well because you're basically getting somebody else's new gun, still new, and all they did was tried it out.
And I think this goes for, because I bought quite a few rifles and pistols through Gunbroker, and we can get into that. And I know there are other gun sites like that, but Gunbroker has established themselves as kind of the longest standing and most reputable gun site. I will put in this caveat. I have had one bad experience off Gunbroker. It had nothing to do with Gunbroker. It had to do with, and I actually wish I could remember the name of this asshole, but he is in Houston. He's a real small thing. And it was, I was looking for a 4th generation Glock 32, and I wanted the ability to be able to change out the back straps.
Right.
And he listed the gun as brand new, as 4th generation. Part of this was my fault. I got out there, I picked up the gun, I looked at it and was like, all right, looks like a Glock, looks like it is brand new and has never been fired, this all seems in order, and didn't really look carefully at whether it was a Gen, it just didn't cross my mind, is this a Gen 3 or a Gen 4?
Right.
Got it home, and was like, immediately, what am I going to do? I'm going to start playing with the back straps, and realized he had sold me a Gen 3. And so I called the guy and said, hey, look, and it's this, we're talking about a 45-minute drive there and a 45-minute return drive. I said, look, you gave me the wrong gun. Do you have the 4th gen? I'll even drive back out there. I'll be irritated, but I'll even drive back out there and swap this out with you. And he said, no, that was a mislisting. And this turned into, I tried to stay as polite about it, and I actually did. I mean, it's me, so I did stay extremely polite the whole time. And, I was like, okay, the guy made a mistake, and he seemed genuinely interested, although he seemed kind of like a dumbass, but he seemed genuinely interested in making it right, and was like, I'll give you $50 off if you keep it. And I was like, I don't really want to keep it. I really wanted a 4th generation. And he said, well, and I said, look, I tell you what, I will hang on to this gun. This way, you're not out of the cash. Can you see if you can get me a 4th gen in stock? And then he's like, yeah, let me take care of this for you, make it right. And then after that, he stopped returning any of my phone calls. How irritated could I have been? Well, I was very irritated. But here's what, there were a couple things that happened here. So one, I did get a brand new gun.
Right.
And honestly, the 4th gen, the 3rd gen is just fine. It wasn't that big of a deal.
Right.
I'm not gonna cry over the fact that I have one or the other. And honestly, I mean, part of it is I don't even know what the 4th gen's like because I've never really screwed with one. Right. So it was just kind of I got a thing in my head that's what I wanted, and that's not what I got.
And there's really not a price difference between them.
There is absolutely no price difference. There's a slight market difference as the 4th generations were first coming onto the market. Like people were getting a slight premium over them, but they weren't. Like the cost of the gun for the dealer wasn't anymore, so it was really about the same. And now, and if you look on Gunbroker now, those two models are the exact same price.
Right.
But I did have recourse I could have taken through Gunbroker, and I could have gotten nasty about it. At the end of the day, it was like, how much is my time worth an hour, and how much time do I want to invest in beating up this guy over it? And it was like, fine, he's a jerk, he's an asshole. Which sucks for him because I like to go through a lot of guns, and I like to have somebody I can recommend to send people to for guns. And, all that guy's going to get now is me telling everyone, do not go to this person ever for guns. So it was a really stupid business move on his part. But that is the only bad experience I've ever had on Gunbroker.
Yeah.
And I know for people that have never really used it, it's kind of it's this weird thing if you've never done it. The rating systems I found to be pretty accurate. Obviously, it's just like eBay in that sense. Go on, look at the person's ratings. This guy had a pretty high rating. It seemed like most people that had dealt with him, and he hadn't had that many.
Right.
And most of his stuff was purchases and less sales. But most of the time, it's an accurate reflection. And I've also sold several guns. And going back to the conversation about you end up with lightly used guns. Like I had a Smith & Wesson Airweight 642 that you really liked yours, and I thought, well, this seems like a really cool gun. I bought it, and I was like, I just don't like it. And I put maybe I put maybe 25 rounds through that thing.
Oh, yeah.
I don't even think I probably put 10 rounds through it.
Yeah, I don't even think you put a full box through that.
Yeah, and actually, no, I didn't. Which actually I forgot to bring you. I was going to bring you my leftover ammo.
I appreciate that.
Now I remember it. But after that, it sat in my safe for probably about the last 5 years.
Yeah.
And I even offered it to my ex-girlfriend, Jennifer. I was like, do you want to carry this? It's small. It's lightweight. Look, it says it on the side. It's lightweight.
Airlight.
It's, it's a nice gun. It'll fit your hands well. And she's like, nah. And she wanted to keep carrying her SIG. So I was like, okay, fine. And so after it's sitting in my safe for years, I decided... Yeah, screw it. I'm going to put it on Gunbroker.
Yeah.
Now selling guns, you are going to take a loss, but it's part of it is so you can say if you have a $400 investment in it, you can say, do I really need this gun?
Right.
Or, is it do I care if I lose $50 or even $75 on this gun? But then at least I have the cash back out of it and I'm rid of a gun that I'm never going to use.
Right.
And I ended up getting, I think I lost like $75 on selling that gun. But you know what? I got my money back out of a gun I never shoot, I don't like. And at the end of the day, the guy that bought it really loved the thing.
Well, so I have sold 2 guns that ended up being lightly used.
Yeah.
My baby Glock.
Yeah.
A little Glock Baby 40. And that thing, I think I put maybe 2 magazines through it, which I guess is 20 rounds.
Yeah.
And I sold that one. Somebody ended up with a gun they hopefully like a lot.
Or they
ended up selling it also. But that gun, for me, actually, I broke even on that gun.
Oh, did you really?
I sold it for the same price I bought it for.
Oh, that's good.
And I did the same thing, broke even on, I had a SIG 229 in a 40.
Yeah.
And as you know, I've gotten rid of everything that is not 9mm or 45 or 22.
Yeah.
In the semi-auto world. Revolvers, I have all kinds of calibers. But in the semi-auto world, it's either 9mm, 45, or 22. And I just got rid of my 40s. So I sold my 229. Again, a relatively lightly used. Now, that one had more rounds through it. That was maybe 250 rounds.
Yeah.
So I broke that gun in for somebody, is basically what that amounts to. And that gun was maintained meticulously. I maintain all my stuff meticulously. And somebody got a good deal on that one, too. And actually, that was a friend. I ended up selling that to somebody that I knew pretty well. And she likes it a lot. For her, it's her home defense pistol. She has a shotgun, too, but home defense pistol. And she loves shooting with it. She likes the 40. And that's it. Worked out really well.
Yeah. I think that's the thing. And what I've found to be the case, having bought several rifles, several handguns, and sold both back on Gunbroker, is that the descriptions you find are very accurate.
Yeah.
The people are usually very good about taking photos of any cosmetic blemishes or stating any problems with guns. Because here's the thing, it is a little bit of a pain in the ass to deal with selling a gun.
Yeah.
You have to go through an FFL, unless it's a local cash dealer or something like that, but you have to go through an FFL, there's shipping involved, and for somebody to then turn around and have to return that gun back to you because you misimported them, can be a big pain for everyone involved. So in general, people are pretty good about that. I know the 642, I have the dumbass scratch on it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, which is, for people listening, is what do you do with a new gun that has a screw in it? Well, you immediately unscrew that screw and open the gun to say, oh, what's in here?
Right.
And I don't remember how it happened, but the screwdriver slipped when I was putting the gun back together, and I scratched the side of the gun.
Yes, yes. Very easy to do.
Yeah.
It's kind of like everybody who has 1911 owners make fun of other 1911 owners because they all have their little, where you basically slide the safety back in and the slide lock. It's actually the slide lock back in. Everybody scratches there. I've done it. I admit it. I'm sure there's some 1911 owner out there better than me who has never done it. But you do it once, and the scratch is there forever, unless you really do want to sit there and polish it out.
Yeah.
Which, honestly, all my guns I view now, I have a very different view of guns than I used to. I do want them to all be pretty.
Right.
And my Browning High Power is by far the prettiest one that I actually have.
It's a very beautiful gun.
But they're also utility.
Mm-hmm.
They have to be both.
Yeah.
And so I'm not going to sit there and polish out the scratch. To me, the scratch is a badge of honor.
Yeah.
And so it is what it is. It's there. And honestly, lately I've become more about my pretty rifles than my pretty pistols. So.
Yeah. I would say the same. But I think anybody looking for use, and I think the same thing, if you're just trying to get a feel for prices, even if you're going to go and do business with a local store, going on to Gunbroker and getting a sense of prices.
Oh, yeah. And then you can get an idea where you can negotiate.
Because I've walked into some gun stores that are way too proud of their inventory.
And almost every gun store I've ever been to will negotiate on price.
Yeah.
And you know what? For those of you who are like, I don't really negotiate very well, forget all that. Just the one statement of, is this the best you can do?
Yeah.
Is normally enough to at least get the price down, knocked down. It may not be the best price you can ever get, but they will knock down the price. And so just keep that in mind. Almost every gun store will do some level of negotiating. I've never tried to do it at like a Cabela's or something like that, and I'm not sure how much leeway they have.
You know, I do know this, that there is the margins for a gun store. The margins on new guns really are pretty terrible.
They are, but they'll almost all work with you.
But they can usually knock off a little bit.
Yeah, it's not like they're knocking off hundreds of dollars.
Right, no, you're not going to see that. Now, you probably have a lot more wiggle room with a used gun.
You do have
and a few gun store owners I have actually sat down and had drinks with on a rare occasion and had long conversations. All of them will say, oh, no, we make all of our money in used guns. New guns are just a pain.
I've heard that too. Used guns and accessories.
Yeah, accessories are the big one. But I think and I think anybody looking first time, like I was saying, Gunbroker is a great place to get an idea. And that's what I recommend to anybody I know. Like, how do I know how much to pay for it? I'm like, I don't know, go look on Gunbroker and see what is the market dictating.
So here's the other thing. Use the review sites, but know this. The magazines don't pan anything.
Yeah.
Okay, the magazines will never tell you something was terrible. So do reviews, go to the forums, check out all that stuff. Read the magazines. I'm not telling you not to read them because I think there's information sometimes that is useful, and you sometimes can tell without them panning something that they're doing it, but they're all beholden to their advertisers. Mm-hmm. So I was just reading an article in Don't Even Judge Me, SWAT magazine. I don't subscribe to it. I don't get it. I was bored and in a bookstore. And I'm going
to judge you.
They literally, and I kid you not, they had a review of 5 different AR-15s.
Which, you and I both had the same conversation. What is the point?
I read them because I was so curious that I could not look through these reviews.
God.
And what they basically came to is all the reviews said it was good.
Yeah.
Because they were all the same gun. Mm-hmm. Because that's what an AR-15 is. It's a spec rifle. You are all building to the same spec. Yeah, there might be a difference here or there over longevity. Maybe a difference here because some of them do, the crazy coating on the bolt. There may be a difference in comfort, but not because of the AR-15, but because of the accessories you choose to put on it.
Yeah.
Right? You might put a Magpul stock on it. You might put a Viltor stock on it. You might have a different type of rail on it. You might have this. You might have a different sighting system on it. And so it's all the stuff you build up your Barbie dream house with. But as far as the Barbie goes, once you strip the clothes off the Barbie, they're all the same. And it's kind of like, to do a review of an AR-15 is, you can almost stop and start it with one simple statement. It either is or it is not an AR-15.
And which brand of accessories you put on it.
Right.
And I think, that's really, I've shot a lot of different ARs, and there are some that, in theory, will last longer. I guess if we're going to talk about the zombie apocalypse, but even then, unless you're talking about you're in a military situation where you are using either 3-round outburst or full auto, it is not that easy. And I don't think maybe one person listening to this show for even the life that this one episode exists will have ever actually shot out the barrel of a life when they literally worn out.
Right.
And it's
I've heard these stories too. We've all heard these ridiculous. Oh yeah, I know a guy who shot out the barrel of his AR-15.
Yeah.
Well, then you know a stud of a man.
Yeah. Who has so much money and so much free time that he can sit on the range all day.
I don't have enough money to buy that much 5.56 ammo. Yeah. I just don't. And it's not like I wouldn't if I got to retire tomorrow because I had the major money flow come in or whatever. I would gladly go sit on the range and do that, but I'm not sure I'd do it all with my AR-15 either.
I don't even know that I would sit on the range and do that.
I wouldn't. I'm saying I might, but I probably
wouldn't. I might spend a little time every day, like maybe cook off like 40 rounds or something.
Right.
But to cook off that much ammo.
It's a lot of ammo.
In a non-select fire.
But I will go to one thing. Use the general rule. If the price is within the range of a good gun, so like if it's made by Smith & Wesson or any of the other many, and I'm not even going to name them all, but there's a ton of manufacturers that I would call no names within the AR-15 community. There is a price range, okay? And they all go from low to mid to high. As long as you're within that price range of like a Smith & Wesson, you're probably going to get a good enough AR. If you go out and find yourself the deal for the $200 AR-15, there is a good chance that you are buying a piece of crap.
There's a good chance you're buying a shell with no internal parts.
Exactly. So if somehow you found that on the used or new market, think twice, maybe 3 times, and then walk away.
Snicker and walk away.
Yeah.
But I think when you're, and it goes back to like what we were talking about earlier, if you are buying a weapon, you are buying it for a purpose. You're not buying a cheap thing. If there is an option, if you are not interested in spending that much money, or if this is something that you're like, I just want one gun to do this. These are none of the guns we've talked about today are the right gun. At that point, go buy yourself a cheap break action 12 gauge, like
depending on what it is.
Single shot. Yeah, I mean those can get expensive.
If you're sitting there and you say I need a perfect ranch gun, an AR-15 may be one of the best quote unquote ranch guns out there.
Yeah.
And if that's what you need for, you got coyote problems, you want a general purpose rifle, you want something that's reliable. But again, if that's what you want and you need that, then go spend a little money. Doesn't have to be a lot, but go spend within the range and get yourself a known brand, someone who has a warranty that you can trust, and go get it. Doesn't have to be new, but just go get something you trust. If what you're looking for is a recreational whatever, then I still wouldn't buy a $200 AR because I'd be afraid of it exploding. But again, if you're just looking for a recreational something, that's a different price tag. And then if you're just looking for a safe queen or a show-off piece, that's a different question also.
Yeah, that becomes a whole different range. And I think the other thing is, and we fell victim to this too, I think, on our first ARs.
More than once.
Yeah, more than once. But I think like one of the first one was obsessing over accuracy.
Oh, yeah.
To the point of stupid.
But accuracy, accessories, I'm going to admit this to everybody right now. So when you stop listening to the podcast, you can go Google it later. I own a Land Warfare AR-15, totally tricked out.
It has the triple nipple grub lure graphite.
It does, and the Johnson rod.
Oh yeah,
it is like platinum.
Yeah, and the LiDAR UFO detector.
Oh yeah, and mine's coyote green, and it is sweet. I'm sorry, it's MRE. Mine is MRE. You can look up that color later. It is freaking awesome. I like it a lot. It is totally a show-off piece.
Yes.
It's also it happens to be a great AR-15, but if I were to do it right now, looking back on all the things I've learned since we naively went into the AR-15 market the first time, I would not buy it again. I would actually, and I'll tell you this right now, it's my recommendation, you can take it or leave it. I would go out and get myself a decent mid-range Smith & Wesson AR-15. I like Smith & Wesson, they're a good company. They apparently make their M&P AR-15 is a fantastic weapon. It's actually what my dad went and got, and he is meticulous in doing his research, more so than even I am. He's got a lot more free time. He's retired now, so that's what I would go get now, and I would save myself 65%.
Yeah, it was. And the person that you bought that from gave you a good deal, but it was still still talking about an expensive AR-15 that was and I think that was
and it shoots sub MOA, which is fantastic, but you know what? I'm not that good.
Yeah.
Not the way I would shoot that.
No, that if you were, you know, and I guess that goes back to the obsession over accuracy. If you think you would ever actually spend the time, money, and energy to become that proficient with the rifle,
then great, do whatever.
If you really are going to learn to take the rifle out to its maximum range, then fine, it makes sense. Anything other than that, to me, it makes no sense. Unless you really are the kind of person that loves to go in the range, put your rifle in a vise, and watch it make tiny little holes. To me...
Which has its place, don't get me wrong.
Which has its place. It's entertaining to watch, but I would never own a rifle
At this point in our lives, after all the things we've learned, that is not why we do, and all the money we spend.
Yeah.
But that's having learned a lot, and we hope... it's one of the reasons we do this podcast, folks. It is because we have made a lot of mistakes. And I'm not even going to say we haven't had fun making a lot of them. Even in the gun world, I love my land warfare, and one of the reasons that I wouldn't sell it is because I know flat out I would never go rebuy it.
Yeah,
and I like it, so why get rid of it? And I'm not, and I know I do like to have an AR-15. And
I think at the time it was just, I guess the point we were making about it is unnecessary expense.
Exactly, and I also know that I could go build up, having done the research, I can go build up a rifle just as good with all of the same accessories for far less money.
Yeah.
And that's why we're only sharing that because, again, I wanted to point out that y'all, if you're sitting there going, oh, wow, these guys are totally making fun of me because I just bought a $2,000 AR-15.
We are, but we're also making fun of ourselves at the same time.
Because I've done it.
Yeah.
And Aaron bought himself a tricked out Rock River.
That I have honestly not shot. I've done a lot of like dry fire work with it and stuff, and I like it. But at the same time, I'm like, I could.
And it's got a great accessory pack on it.
Yeah, but to be,
your Barbie is dressed very well.
But my Barbie is dressed well. But I think as far as if I had it to do over again, I wouldn't spend that kind of money on it. I mean, mine wasn't as crazy as yours, but no.
No, mine was nuts.
Yours was nuts, but I totally respected the nuts, and am honestly still a little jealous of it. It's a beautiful gun, but your Barbie is dressed wonderfully.
But I could go out, just to put it in perspective, I could go out, and for the money I spent on my Barbie, I could actually go get myself a good AR-15, like at the Smith & Wesson, that probably shoots close enough in accuracy that it's not an issue.
Yeah.
And go get myself the M1A SOCOM 16.
Yeah.
And have probably spend the same.
Yeah,
probably spend the same, and that's the crazy part. And I'm not even saying that's what I would end up doing because I probably wouldn't even get the AR-15 if I was getting the SOCOM 16. So
right,
just things like that, and it's just thinking about what you're going to buy. But we've all made the mistakes. We've all had the fun. If you do buy it, don't regret it. Enjoy it.
Yeah, enjoy it. I mean, it's still. It's still a good gun as long as you didn't buy it at the peak of when, like a friend of ours, the day all ARs sold out a little while back was the day he called me and said, okay, I'm ready to buy an AR. And I'm like, well, that's nice. A, why are you telling me I don't sell ARs? And B, well, you're too late. They're all gone. Now, that's changed. They're back in stock and stuff. And,
the ARs are back in stock. Yeah. You still can't get 22 ammo.
Which is, I guess we drank through figuring out what probably happened to 22 ammo. Yeah, there's probably a lot more profit in the larger caliber.
Yeah, exactly. I would imagine that since everybody who makes 22 ammo also makes other ammunition, they're focused on 9mm 45 and 5.56 and 308.
Because everybody's complaining about that you can't find 22. You can find 22, but you're going to find the expensive target ammo.
Right, the Lapua 22 ammo.
The Lapua, the Wolf, or what is the other one that I actually do have a case of? It starts with R. I think you bought a case of it too.
Oh, the Aguila or Aguila?
No.
I can't remember. Whatever it is, I do have a case of it.
Yeah, and see, that's expensive enough as a manufacturer. I would look at it and say, okay, the profit margins are probably, for the same amount of effort, and cost materials wise, we make more money doing X. So that makes so that honestly, I think that's what we figured out the other night must have happened to 22.
Yeah, and I'm personally hoping that 22 eventually becomes available again sooner than later because I do like shooting it now. I have enough that I don't. It doesn't hurt too bad when I go to the range and shoot it.
Yeah.
But I do notice that I am much more careful about how much of it I use when I go.
You don't blow a 500 round brick just
on a Sunday because
it's there. We have it. You could which we used to do.
Right, exactly, and it was cheap. I mean, a 500 round brick. I don't even remember.
It was like $15.
Yeah, it was between 15 and 20. 15, 20, I think, depending on which crazy ammunition. The expensive stuff was 20.
The expensive stuff was $20.
Now, I think I had a guy offer me recently for a brick. He was offering me $100.
I had a gun store offer to buy my stockpile of 22 for 4 times what I paid for it.
Yeah, well, and that would make sense. That's about right. So I think if you look at mine at the $100, it's 5 times per brick. I could probably sit there at the gun range and sell bricks at $100 a piece and make a ton of money.
Yeah.
But of course, I have to look at replacement cost, and since you can't replace it right now,
replace it, forget it. It doesn't exist. But I think moving on, as far as you brought up SOCOM 16 and going back to assumptions versus evidence, a lot of people make fun of that, and I now have one, and what was it? We heard typical gun store kind of crap. I was looking at one day, this was years ago, and the idiot behind the counter said, "Oh, the SOCOM 16 makes baby Jesus cry." Which I was just like, I think that's one, that's somebody else's religion, but two, I'm pretty sure that's kind of a rather offensive thing to be slinging around over a gun that actually this guy didn't know anything about for its intended purpose.
Yes, and his view was a 308 and a 16-inch barrel, blah blah blah. It's useless. And it's like, well, not really.
Not really.
It's a very useful.
You still have very good range on it.
Right, you're not taking 1,000-yard shots with a 16-inch SOCOM.
No.
I mean, that's just it.
No, and you are going to punch bigger holes in things. And if you like the 308, it's great.
Right.
You know, it's it's still the M1 platform.
Right. Now it has its share of weird things. It's heavy.
Well, it is. Well, I don't think I would want a lightweight through, or if it extremely. But
I'm not sure I would either. But it is heavy.
It is heavy, but it's that we did figure out that it is the goofy quad rail.
That Viltor on the SOCOM 2.
Yeah, on the SOCOM 2.
Right, that's stock. The SOCOM 16 is heavy, but nowhere near as heavy as the SOCOM.
No, I would say that quad rail. It doesn't double the weight. I can't remember the exact measure, but it is like you pick up the SOCOM 2, and it's like, holy crap, this thing is heavy.
Oh my god! Yeah, I didn't even. I would be like, I can't hold this at the range for very long. It's too hot in Texas.
Not offhand anyway, but
it's too hot in Texas.
Yeah, it's too hot in Texas. But I mean, not as far as like hold it, but as far as just it unnecessary weight, and I stripped the thing off.
Oh yeah.
So, but it's for its intended purpose, and I think even Masad Ayub was saying when he's doing like border stuff, like down near the Mexico border, that is his rifle of choice.
Yeah, and a lot of guns, you can tune it better than factory if that's what you choose to do.
And there are even a fairly expensive stock, not fairly expensive, but I guess in the scope of what you paid for that gun to begin with, you're talking about a stock that I want to say it's like $700. That makes it. That will actually really make that an actually very accurate gun.
Yeah, and I believe that completely. I mean, it makes sense. It's a Springfield Armory weapon. They're a quality company. Yeah. They make good products. We are not getting an endorsement from them, although if you'd like to send us a check, we're here.
We're happy to take money,
but I like that rifle. I actually like it a lot.
It's a very cool rifle.
I'm not sure it would be my next rifle. I don't know.
Yeah.
The funny part is these days, I look at like the money that I could spend on that stuff, and I think, okay, do I focus on that, or do I focus on all the things I might not be able to buy soon?
Right. Like food.
Or within the firearms world still.
Yeah.
A suppressor.
Yeah, I guess, and that launches I can speak today.
Who needs speaking? It's only a podcast.
Exactly. That launches
us into a discussion around the NFA changes.
Thank you. Apparently, Lip's not working at this exact moment, but I'll let you. Actually, did I initially said they're totally going to screw us on this, and you said no, it's going to be fine. And I'm not picking on you about it. I'm just picking on you about it.
So originally they hadn't announced this stuff, and there was a chance that the current director of the ATF was not going to become the director.
Let's back up for just so that people that have not listened to our NFA show,
go listen to the NFA show. But I'll give you the quick synopsis. In order to get a suppressor, there's a couple of things. Anything that's classified as a Class 3 weapon. Okay, that's a suppressor. It could be any other weapon, which could be like a Subu, the little short shotguns, the short barrel shotgun.
I think was it.
Yeah, and it's kind of like a pistol short barrel shotgun thing.
Yeah, with
a forward grip.
What's her name on Burn Notice?
Oh yeah. The attractive woman on Burn Notice.
I forgot her.
But I don't remember her name either. That's in any other weapon. Fully automatic weapons, short barrel rifles, these all fall under NFA, or the National Firearms Act. Part of the National Firearms Act is that you have to get a tax stamp in order to get those things. So for instance, I'm going to walk you through here's the very quick and dirty for suppressor. I want a suppressor, I go buy a suppressor, I fill out paperwork called a Form 4. In Texas here, or for me, not in Texas, but for me, I would do it under a trust. Some people can do it by getting a chief law enforcement officer to sign off. You mail that off to the ATF. You wait 4 to 6 months. They mail you back a tax stamp. Oh, that costs you $200. So they mail you back a $200 tax stamp, and then you get to pick up your new firearm-related thing.
Yeah.
But what they're doing is, traditionally trusts were set up because not all of us can get the chief law enforcement officer to sign off.
Well, like, so in Houston, both the
or
sheriff...
Austin.
Or Austin. Oh, yeah, that's true. So in Houston, both the sheriff and the chief of police, if you submit the paperwork to them, they don't deny it. They just won't acknowledge that they ever received it.
They sit on it, and they just don't sign anything. And so it creates a problem where it makes it difficult. Well, the NFA Trust was created, and it is great. It is a system where you create a legal trust. It is a document that creates an entity. It's a revocable living trust. And in that revocable living trust, you basically put these items. And what the ATF is adding, and so personally, I don't have any issue with the background check edition.
No, actually, I thought that should have happened.
Right. So what they've done is they're talking about adding a background check to anybody named on the trust. And then they're talking about one more piece. And this is the part that I don't like. Adding the chief law enforcement officer requirement back to even the trust. Now, here's the thing. I want to point this out to everybody. When you go and pick up a suppressor, you don't just get to pick it up. You do still have to fill out all the same stuff you fill out for a firearm. And they still run the same background check they do when you buy a firearm. It's the same telephone call they make when you buy a gun. They make when you pick up your suppressor. So all they're doing by adding this chief law enforcement requirement is really telling us that if you live in one of these counties where the Clio doesn't want to sign off,
which unfortunately is
a lot of us, even though it's legal in 39 states, by the way, there's a lot of places where the Clio just won't sign off. You end up not being able to get any of those Class 3 weapons, and they're doing it under the guise of it'll make us safer. The reality of it is, and if those of you who feel like doing the research, I don't know how many crimes are committed with suppressors, short barrel rifles, automatic rifles, or any of those things, but I would imagine
almost none. Now, we do know of one instance.
We know of one where the NFA Trust system was used by a criminal to get some things, but
it is actually the.
But we don't actually know if any of the weapons were used to actually commit crimes. That's Correct. The interesting part. So it's kind of funny how all that works. So I would venture to guess, and again, I'm pulling this out of nowhere. For those of you who don't know the analogy, FMA, it's from my ass, but. I'm guessing number of suppressors used in crimes, extremely low.
Yeah, and short barrel rifles.
Oh, short barrel rifles is probably next to none. Same with suppressors, next to none. Automatic rifles are just so damn expensive that I can't imagine they're used in a lot of crimes because you'd be afraid to lose your $20,000 rifle.
At least not. We're talking about legally obtained.
Right, legally obtained.
We go back to the same issue of people with a concealed handgun license and everything else. Why screw with them? You're talking about a person who went through the trouble and the legal channels to do background checks, to do everything else, to legally obtain it. A criminal is not going to go through that.
Right. So for those of you following so far, and I know it's been a lot of information, so if you know the NFA process, you'll know that this is a huge extra burden. If you don't know the NFA process, I do urge you to go listen to our show on NFA items And then you'll hear that this is a huge extra burden. What I will tell you is, for those of you out there who are thinking about buying a suppressor or a short barrel rifle or any of these things, get your paperwork in now, because it does take them a while to get these new regulations and rules put through the system. They are not there yet. Right now, they're just up for review. So right now, you would be, if you got into the process now or within the next month or two, you are grandfathered under the current process. So that's just a recommendation.
But that's for any new, because like even you or I, because you have to go through, for those people who've never done it and haven't listened to the end, you have to go through this process. It's not like you get your trust and get a tax stamp and then you can go willy-nilly.
Oh, yeah, it's every time.
It's every single time. Trust me, because I've been through it.
You only do the trust once, but everything else happens every time.
Yeah, and it's just as big of a pain in the butt every time.
Yeah, these days, I do believe it's up to a 6-month wait to get your tax stamp. So you're paying them $200 for them to sit, and they cash your check right away. Don't you worry. Check gets cashed. Within it hits the mail, and somehow magically by the next day they've cashed that bad boy.
But they won't even acknowledge that they got it.
Right, for another 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So they won't acknowledge they got the check for a while, but they cash it right away. And then it's 6 months later, you will get, or your dealer will get in the mail your tax stamp, and then you can go and pick up whatever it is you bought. But I like the suppressors I own. They're fantastic. For anybody listening, I've destroyed them all. But realistically, it doesn't impact people who already have these things. There is no proposal to change anything for anybody who's already got one. It's rules to get new tax stamps that they're talking about changing. But it's just a giant pain, and it's just another way to regulate law-abiding citizens.
Yeah, and it's a solution to a problem that didn't exist.
Exactly. These people have a hammer, and they're looking for nails.
Yeah.
And
it's going back to assumption versus evidence.
Yep.
Which is just that they were looking at going, ooh, scary. Bad people must use that. No, goofballs like us that are like, you know what? Maybe I want to be able to go to the range and not use hearing protection. Or maybe I just think it's entertaining to have one, and I'm not going to do anything that I shouldn't be doing with it.
Right. In Texas, it's now legal to hunt with a suppressor, and you know what? That makes perfect sense, because as someone who might want to go out hunting, I don't want to lose my hearing.
Yeah.
And I don't necessarily want to have to wear hearing protection all day, because that impedes my ability to hear something. So the problem is, I don't want to have to put it in to take the shot, because that's time. That's precious time. For those of you who are hunters out there, you'd understand the concept there. It's if I've got to put in hearing protection in order to take my shot, that animal could be gone.
Now there are just quick caveat to that. I mean, there is hearing protection now, electronic hearing protection that does work really well.
Yes, there is, but it's still. If
I don't want to wear it. Why? Right. There's nothing wrong with a suppressor. I could use a suppressor and bypass.
As a wise man once said, if suppressors were invented today, it would be an OSHA requirement on every gun.
Which we'll get to that in a second, because you told me about some news that I think will be funny to share, and is along those lines. But I guess going back to the other thing about it that makes it so stupid is, unless you're talking about a 22 and a good suppressor, suppressors do not make guns silence. They are,
and even the 22s, as we know, you still hear it.
You still hear it.
It's just really quiet. And not.
But as soon as you step out of a 22, you're not talking. It's not quiet.
No, silencer is a really bad term, and I think it was created to make people scared.
Yeah.
They are suppressors. They're basically mufflers. That's all they are. It's a muffler for a gun. And if you think about your car is not silent.
No. Unless you drive a Jeep or something.
I have heard ARs shot with suppressors on them and 308s shot with suppressors, and I can actually tell you that with those level of gun, I still want hearing protection. With a 9mm, you don't need it, but it doesn't hurt to have.
Yeah. I did find shooting first few shots with my 308 suppressed.
Yeah.
Not bad. Reasonable. Still a little loud.
Right.
It does start to get irritating after about the 5th round.
Oh, I believe that. It's still loud.
And I've got hearing damage in that ear that it's irritating. So, which is actually from being out hunting with the 30-06.
Right.
And having a conversation with someone, and then it's, there's a deer, and not putting that hearing protection back in there.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and it's still loud. That's why I say it's not like it's not a silencer. It's anything but. They are still loud.
Everything you saw in the movies.
Yeah, it doesn't necessarily sound what you would expect a traditional gun to sound like.
Yeah.
But it's still a big explosion happening.
Yeah. And I guess as far as, short barrel rifles and everything else, you're talking about... This isn't like cutting off... You're not talking about a weapon that is as simple as cutting off the barrel like you could on a shotgun or something. So
right.
Usually you are talking about more expensive weapons. You are talking about stuff that... Look, if criminals were going to use them, they would already be using them.
Well, and that's the whole thing. It isn't hard to make these things happen, per se.
Right.
It's why... So those of us who are already going through the process of creating a legal document... going through the process of filling out a Form 4, going through the process of going through a legal dealer, paying the $200 tax stamp, putting ourselves on, for those of you who aren't following all this, essentially you are putting yourself on a firearms registry by choice in order to do this. So you've already gone through that whole process of basically putting yourself on a list. Mm-hmm. And now they're going to add extra burden to those of us who made a choice to go through this extra burden in the first place. They're going to add burden. Anyone who believes that will stop criminals from doing whatever criminals do is kidding themselves.
Which, if you go look up the studies, the number of killings or assaults or anything else committed with rifles of these kinds is so incredibly minuscule to begin with.
Right. The most common murder weapon in the country is a blunt object.
Yeah.
Which could be a hammer, a baseball bat, all kinds of things like that, since they don't categorize those.
Yeah.
For those of you who missed the big joke, what was it, LaRue Tactical? Was it those guys who did the assault hammer?
I don't remember. It's on our Facebook page. I don't remember who it was. I think it may have been LaRue. I don't remember who it was.
I can't remember if it was LaRue or one of the other companies, but the assault hammer. And that's very real because I think hammers are probably used more times to kill people than guns, knives, or any of that stuff.
Probably.
And it's just crazy stuff.
It is. It's ridiculousness. It's people that are scared of an object that then want to impose their will on someone else.
Ah, the nanny.
The nanny. So I think as far as what we'll see in the future, I guess it's, until... So you were saying that somebody is making a big push for it. Was it Remington?
Oh, yes, SIG, actually.
Oh, that's right, SIG.
Remington will probably follow because they own AAC, which is another
and they just invested a lot of money into trying to bring the 300 Blackout to market, which is
a suppressed round.
It's a round 4 being suppressed.
And all these states have been lobbied to now make suppressed hunting legal. Mm-hmm. So this is Jonathan's opinion. Who the hell knows if it'll happen? But it looks like SIG's marketing campaign is all around hearing protection. And I think the way they framed it was noise pollution. Stop the noise pollution. And SIG is now getting into the suppressor market here in the U.S. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of interesting. And you can only hope that SIG's actually got money and they can lobby.
Yeah.
Remington has money. They can lobby. And Remington bought AAC, which puts them in the suppressor market too. And like you said, they're pushing the 300 Blackout.
Yeah, they spent a lot of money bringing that to market.
And I've got to imagine all the other companies now that are smaller, but still with some money, like the Gentex of the world and the Silencer Co's and all them.
That will get in on the action.
That'll get in on that action because now that hunting, like for instance, Texas, and I think it's a bunch of, I think 30 states now have legal. There's 39 states where suppressors are legal. 30 states where hunting with a suppressor is legal. I could be wrong on that number, so I don't remember where I saw that. But at 30 states, somewhere around there, that's cool. And if once that gets to that point, there's enough money in it that I can only hope that people start lobbying to at least remove the suppressors from the NFA list.
Yeah.
They may not be able to lobby to remove short barrel rifles and full auto and all that. But hopefully over time, and I don't know how long it'll take, but I'd love to see suppressors removed from the list because I like shooting with a suppressor. I like shooting with a suppressor I can't speak anymore. I'm getting your disease. With a suppressor. That's what I meant to say. Not with the suppressor. My little mumble language earlier. I like shooting with them. I enjoy it because to me it makes the whole experience more enjoyable when I don't have to wear hearing protection or as much. Like, an example is today it is 102 degrees here in Austin. If we went shooting today, I don't want to put it, like if we're going to go shoot the 308, I don't want to put earmuffs on and plugs. I just want to put some light plugs in and not worry about it.
Yeah.
And to me, the suppressor lets me do that. And with the 22, I can go completely without hearing protection.
Yeah.
And all you really hear is a bullet hit the target.
Yeah, I think you usually hear the action.
Yeah, if it's not a bolt action, you'll hear the action, and then you'll hear the round hit the target. On the other hand, with a 9mm and the rest of them, you hear a pretty big boom.
Yeah.
It just sounds a little different.
I think, and I guess that was one of the discussions you and I were having as far as like going back to us spending money on things was,
yes.
I've actually opted out and made the conscious decision as soon as I heard they were going to do that. It was, crap, well, if you want anything, you better get it now.
Right.
And I thought about it and said, you know what, I've got what I really wanted. I would like to have a 9mm suppressor, but at this point it's like, I'm not going to go rush out and spend the money on it because if the zombies come tomorrow, there are ways to make your own.
Yes.
And if we are at that level of doomsday situation, then who cares?
Yeah, and I agree with that. I'm kind of on the same level where I'm not out there filling out Form 4s right now because I just don't need it. I actually shoot mostly 22, even though I'm worried about supply. And so I'm not out there looking for my next one right now either.
Yeah.
I kind of wanted a short barrel rifle, but again, that was more of a recreational fun kind of concept than anything else.
Well, you were also talking about it as a home defense weapon.
I was talking about actually building out a 300 blackout home defense rifle.
A honey badger.
Basically a honey badger-like rifle. A suppressed 300 blackout short barrel system with a red dot optic on it and making that basically the ultimate home defense short barrel rifle.
Yeah.
And while all of that sounds really cool to me, I'm not sure I'd actually do it.
Because what, you figured out that's 4 tax stamps.
Well, yeah, assuming I actually did the honey badger thing, I would probably do it with 2, short barrel rifle and detachable suppressor.
Yeah.
But the honey badger itself is ridiculous. It's like 2 detachable suppressors, 1 integrated, and it's short barrel. So it's like you end up with 4 tax stamps for 1 weapon. That's $800 in tax stamps. What I would probably want to do is more like $400 in tax stamps. But the other part of it is, would I really keep that laying by my bed? Would I do this, that, and the other thing? Would that be what I'd want to train on?
Yeah.
300 blackout is not dirt cheap.
Nothing.
It's also hard to come by. It's not the easiest round to find these days because, again, the manufacturers are focused on 5.56, 9mm.
I have heard that Remington is trying to ramp up.
They are.
Because they invested so much money in the round, in acquiring the round and doing everything
It's just not available yet.
It's not available yet. And I guess that there's 2 things there. One that leads into a conversation that was actually happening on the forum that I thought would be good to bring into this episode. And another thing just about ammo in general. Which we kind of led off with a little bit last season in talking about kind of our predictions for where ammo is going, and we can talk about that for a minute. I am saying it is, if you are sitting on the right websites, and they're the same websites we shared with everybody before, and we get nothing from any of those websites for, just so we're clear. Like, the only time this show ever recoups any cost of doing it is when somebody clicks on one of our Amazon links, and we get a few cents out of that. But those same sites, you generally, any day of the week, if you're looking for a particular caliber, most likely one of those, however many websites it was, like 4 sites we listed, actually have it. And even the one we didn't list that is a sponsor of the Survival Podcast, bulkammo.com. Actually, there's been a bunch of times where people have asked me recently about ammo, and I've said, let me look. And I've gone over to bulkammo.com, and they actually have had it. So
cool.
I do find that they're a little more expensive than the sites that we listed, but it doesn't matter how cheap it is if they don't actually have it.
Yeah,
I mean, they can list it for free. If they don't have it, then what does it matter?
And so I've been able to find pretty consistently 9mm, 45 on one of the sites somewhere, right? I can find 5.56 or 223, and I can find 308.
Yeah.
I have had a very hard time finding 22.
Yeah.
It's actually nearly impossible.
Cabela's has 22, but going back to...
And they also have limited supply that you can buy at one time.
They have limited supply you can buy at one time. You're not going to be buying your 500, and you're not going to buy the 5,000 round cases like what we used to do.
It's like 2 boxes of 50.
Exactly. And you're going to be buying the Target stuff.
Right. Exactly. And then the other thing that I've had a hard time finding is some of the more esoteric rounds. And I can find them if I search enough over a long enough period of time. So even finding, and I guess I need to be a little more clear, I can find 44 Magnum, for instance.
Yeah.
What I can't find is the exact 44 Magnum round I'm looking for. Or same thing goes for 357 or 38. It's more like I just can't find that specific load I want. So that makes it tough. I have a buddy who does have a 300 blackout, and for him, he can find a lot of the high velocity. He can't find the subsonic that he wants.
Which is really the point of that round to begin with.
Exactly. So it's kind of, there's sometimes you can find things, but it's not actually what you want. Yeah. And I have found that to be the case a lot.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is it's out there. The price is still high, though.
It is.
I was having this discussion or having this talk with a mutual friend of ours the other day, which was he had finally made the decision. This was the same person that made the decision when ARs no longer existed.
Right. I finally want to buy an AR. I'd finally like to buy ammo in bulk.
Yeah, and we finally convinced him, he finally convinced himself to start buying ammo in bulk since it is cheaper and it's easier to deal with.
But this was a few weeks ago, everyone. This was a few weeks ago. This wasn't like a few months ago or even years ago. This was like weeks ago, after bulk ammo disappeared. Yeah,
but I did find... I gave him a list of places to look. It was the same list of places I gave all of y'all. And then, so he emailed me and said, I can't find it anywhere. I sent him the list, and he said, I still can't find it. And I looked at one of them, and I was like, okay, there's this one other place that I did forget to send you. They actually have cases of 9mm in stock right now, and it's Spear Gold Dot. It's good stuff. Yeah.
I think you sent me the link.
I sent you the link, too, because as soon as I saw it, I was like, oh, I needed to... felt the need to let you know about it, too. I
appreciate it.
But I told him, I was like, look, if you're going to do this, they only have...
Don't think about it.
Don't think about it. There's 18 cases, and either you can spend the money or you can't spend the money, but don't ask me about it again and just make the decision. And I think that's it. You do have to have an ammo... I mean, like, in anything, but you have to have an ammo budget right now. Because it's it's easy to get caught up and buy... more than you really should, and perhaps end up with it on a credit card or something that you're not, and end up paying interest on something that's already too expensive to begin with, or I should say inflated to begin with. Right. And then the other thing is, either you want the 500 rounds or the 100 rounds or whatever, or you don't. But I think I see a lot of people hemming and hawing, and I don't know, or can I spend this? Right. And then they're like, well, it all went away. And it was like, well, yeah, no kidding, because everybody else is looking for the same thing. So, but we're still in that trap with ammo of it's there, but it comes in and goes out so fast.
I think there's a lot of people still stocking up. I think there's a lot of factors involved. Apparently, all the ammo guys claim to be running full on.
Yeah, even Hornady put out a parody clip where they made fun, like as if they were sitting around the factory cooking hot dogs on some of the equipment and goofing off. And, and they're like, no, we've hired tons more people, put in more square footage, we're working around the clock.
Yeah, and I think all of them are. I don't know how long it's going to take. I don't think anyone can tell you how long it's going to take.
What did we say the last time we talked about it? I think we
actually said a year.
I think we said a year. And honestly, I think that's still on track. I think it is too. I think prices will only come down a little bit. Right. But I think availability will begin. And then once availability is flushed, prices will start.
Well, I think I'm going to amend the statement a little bit. I think it's a year before the standard calibers start returning to regular supply. And I think it's at least another year before you start seeing the other calibers coming back, including 22, by the way. I actually do believe that 22 is going to take maybe another year and a half before we start seeing ready supply.
I could see that, because they really are. You're talking about manufacturers are so focused on... And you're not using the same machinery to make the same thing, so it's probably just a labor issue.
Yeah, I have no idea. I don't know. Or if they have to change out dies. I've got no idea how that process works for those guys. I don't claim to know the manufacturing process for ammo in a big factory. But I would guess that they're going to want to get their biggest money stuff done first.
Yeah, they are a business.
And then they'll focus on all the other stuff. And that's going to include, I'm going to guess it's going to be a ramp of different calibers over different time periods. And if you own something that's really esoteric, that's going to take the longest to come back. Yeah. Unless somebody steps into the market and is like, I am the new 22 manufacturer, that's all I do, and I'm just going to own this space. Yeah. And that could happen. You know what? If you've got the capital to go do that right now and you're listening to this show, let us know.
We'd love to test your
to talk
product.
to you about that one.
Love to talk to you about
product. Yeah. Let's talk. If that's you and you are ready to go start that manufacturing facility today, let's just all be realistic. It's going to take 6 months to 9 months to get it up and running. Mm-hmm. But I want to talk to you if that's what you're doing.
I think the other thing to kind of close out the show with, as far as guns, I mean, it looks like this administration, for the length that this administration exists, is going to continue trying to attack things in this space.
Yep.
And I think that is unfortunate, and I think it is just something that we're unfortunately going to have to live with, that's going to be what keeps happening.
Yeah.
But I think to go on to another thing and bring up the part that was on the forum, because I thought it was a very interesting question, and I think for most seasoned gun owners, they've made the decision of what they do, but for newer gun owners or people who are just kind of stepping into it, it's more, oh, I don't know, what do I do here? And that is, what do you do with weapons you have? Do you, especially like in your bedroom, do you leave a weapon loaded or unloaded with the key lock or on and off? And I'm going to start by saying, I think if you're going to have a weapon accessible, putting those trigger locks on them is just about the dumbest thing ever. Yeah. By the time you realize someone has entered your home, the time it's going to take you to get that trigger lock off, forget it. It's done. You're finished. So I think you're better off getting one of those fingerprint scanning safes.
Yeah, or even the non-fingerprint scanning ones that just rely on a quick finger code where you just punch. I think it's got 4 slots for your fingers, and you punch the code right and it opens.
Yeah.
And those are quick. I've actually used those before.
Yeah, and they've got ones for handguns, and they've got small ones that you can even put next to the bed for longer guns that you'd put a shotgun or something in.
Yep.
Personally, now, okay, I'm going to put this in there before anybody misunderstands what I'm saying, is I do not have children in my home. Right. No one under the age of 21 is allowed in my home.
And Barron is well trained in the use of
Barron is well trained. He's also well over the legal age of...
Right, he can own a firearm.
He's like 10 million years old.
Right, he can own a firearm, and he's well trained in the use.
He is. Now, if he could just have thumbs.
He is a tactical Weimaraner.
He is a tactical Weimaraner. But in all seriousness, there is no one under the age of 21 that is allowed in my house. On the rare occasion... Okay, except for those 19-year-old... Well, wait, you won't go into that. They were from Pepperdine. They said they needed a place to stay while they were in Houston.
They're still half your age.
Yeah. So, anyway, but the point being that no one under the age of 21 is allowed in my house.
He cards them at the door.
I do. No, it's just I don't allow children in my house for that reason. I don't want to have to go through my home and put things up. On the rare occasions that we did have someone come into the home that was underage, I knew an hour ahead of time. I put everything away, locked it all in a safe. The only thing that stayed out was the gun that I always carry with me every day, and I kept that on my person at all times. So with that, safety statement stated that I am fanatical about that. Like, I know where every gun in my home is, and if it is, and my personal rule is, if it is not in the safe, it should be loaded.
I agree with this. So if I have a gun that is it is for my defense, and it is in my home, and it is not locked up specifically to be just put away,
right,
then it is loaded.
Yes, because the last thing I want to do is pick up a weapon and go click.
Right, because an unloaded gun is a paperweight.
Mm-hmm.
Or a hammer.
Or a hammer.
Yeah.
And but that's my personal philosophy. When I sleep, I typically sleep with 2 weapons. The one that I carry every day.
Doesn't count as a weapon, Aaron.
That's a different show. And we're back to the conversation about the 19-year-old Pepperdine students. But I guess the weapon that I carry every day on my hip.
Okay.
Goes in my nightstand, and then I have a pistol grip shotgun that I keep next to the bed for sleeping purposes. And that is when I get up in the morning, the shotgun goes back into the safe, and the pistol goes back on my hip.
I actually follow a very similar routine to that. So I agree with you 100%. We also don't have children in the house. Mm-hmm. But I grew up with a loaded gun next to my parents' bed, and I always knew where it was, and I also always knew from the time that I was old enough to be able to hold it it was never mystified. In other words, it was never made a mythical thing that you can't touch and is somehow holy. At the same time, it was always made, this is not yours, and if you do touch it, then you will suffer the consequences of having touched it. And that's where understanding, having a healthy fear and respect for one's parents, and love and all that stuff, but a healthy fear of one's parents is an important one. I knew that touching that gun was the equivalent of touching a hot stove. The difference was, as I got a little bit older, there was no mythical thing about it. I would go shooting with my dad. I understood the gun. It was a safety thing, and I also understood that because of safety, I was not to touch it unless he was there, with a caveat. If I needed to touch it for an emergency, when I was old enough to understand what that meant in a defensive situation, it was explained to me how that gun worked in that case. And hopefully that wasn't too complicated, but the whole idea here is you have to take the crazy mythology away from the gun, I think.
Don't make it an alluring taboo
Exactly.
subject.
It is a thing, it is real, it is there, and that's what it is. So my sister and I grew up in a home where there was a loaded gun in a nightstand, always. Okay, the only thing was, the way my dad had it is, there was, I guess what he did when we were not really little, old enough to be able to go in there, the magazine wasn't necessarily in the gun. So all he would have to do is insert the magazine and rack the slide. As we got a little older, there was a fully loaded gun.
The caveat being, your father actually had the training that
completely.
was a reasonable thing to do.
Exactly. And we also had a 2-story home, so we understood tactical advantage, and if you heard somebody come in and all that kind of stuff, he had that time. So there was time to do that, and he understood what that meant, and it was a large home. So there were certain things that you have to take into account that he took into account. And but I will say, we always had that in our house. So to me, it was normal, and it wasn't... I can also tell you, in all my growing up, I had my wild times, but I never was like, oh, hey, buddies, let's go take a look at the gun.
Yeah.
None of that ever happened. So maybe it just depends on how you choose to treat the gun around your children and how that training works and things like that. But yeah, that particular gun never ended up in safe.
I had the exact same childhood group. And I think both of our fathers slept next to a 1911.
Yeah, exactly.
And on most of occasions, my father also wore that 1911 on his hip most days.
My father did for a long time too.
Yeah.
And when he chose not to, it lived in the drawer all the time.
Yeah, exactly. And it was all... Yeah. He did keep the rest of his guns kept up. But it was the same thing. It was an understanding of, this is mine, it is not yours, it is not yours to touch. And from a very young age, took me out and taught me, this is how you shoot, this is how you respect a weapon, this is how you operate a weapon safely.
And I'm a huge proponent of that.
Oh,
I'm a huge proponent of that. So if you're going to have firearms in your house and you have children, then that is something you have to do from day one. And I believe that's the safest way to own a gun. Beyond that, I do actually do what you do, because I don't like leaving a gun in the house when I'm not there that isn't locked up. So it's either on me, or it's in a safe, or it's next to me when I'm home.
Yeah.
But it is never just in my house, not stored properly.
Right. Even leaving Houston and coming up to Austin, the bulk of my firearms went into my safe. The firearms that are stuff that I really would never... I don't even want to chance somebody making off with it in the safe, went actually up to a larger safe in my office that would be a giant pain in the ass for somebody to get into. I mean, you're not getting into that without SWAT. You're not getting into that building without SWAT team coming down on you.
Exactly. Well, we've done a similar thing. Yeah. In our home, even, we have a safe room.
Yeah.
And that room is actually tied to its own alarm.
Yeah.
Which we have done, which is kind of neat how it works. It notifies me, and at the same time, if it's not disarmed, it notifies the police. But even if it is disarmed, it always notifies me when that safe door is opened. Every time I get a text message as soon as that door is opened, anytime.
Yeah.
And I find that to just be peace of mind for me. If it is armed, it notifies me and the police, which is great.
Yeah.
They have a very fast response time in my neighborhood, and I'm very happy about that.
Yeah. And I think as far as... Now, I'm going to go to an extreme. I did actually grow up with someone whose father was much more of an avid shooter than my father was, and was much bigger into teaching his son about. They enjoyed shooting together a lot from a very young age. And he did something that to this day I don't think I would actually do, but I am going to tell you now. There was never an issue because of it, because he made it. It wasn't a magical, mystical thing. And he actually, I think it was like at 15, he got his own handgun that stayed in his room. And I will tell you this, that kid was a flaming freaking idiot. But, I mean, just as far as someone who would do just stupid things. But he, because his father did actually spend the time with him, same way your father did, my father did, taught him the respect of that weapon. Even though every other part of his life he would just set on fire if he could, that was one thing that he actually always did stay responsible about, which to this day just amazed me. I would never actually do that.
Right.
But I think that was an example of an extreme.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably what most progressives or liberals think gun owners do, is here, kid, have a gun.
Yeah.
And I want to say one last time, I would never, ever do that, and I think it was a horrible idea to do.
Yeah. I haven't even thought about it.
It was crazy, but
yeah.
that I want to just give the example of somebody that was a flaming moron, that was taught properly, that had it within their own bedroom.
And I would add to that, hey, you know your kid better than I do.
Yeah, exactly.
So if you think it's going to be a problem, then you've got to make decisions in your own life. I can't tell you how to live.
Exactly.
I can only tell you how I do it and how I grew up.
Yeah.
And I don't know how I'll do it when I have children. So I'm going to even add to that I'm not going to go profess that somehow I magically know what I will do when I have kids. I may change my mind on some of these things. I don't think so. I have pretty firm beliefs in them. That said, I hold the right to change my mind at any time.
Exactly. I do have some experience with it. I dated a woman for a number of years that had a young daughter. I think her daughter was 1 year old when we started dating, and then we were together for about 4 years or 5 years or something like that. And her daughter had her own bedroom at my house and everything like that. And there were still guns. There were guns in the house at that time, as there has always been. I basically treated the house at that time as I do at this time when anyone under the age of 21 enters my home, which is everything that was not going to be on my person goes in this is unloaded and goes in the safe. And half of it, or I'd say almost all of it, has a cable lock through it too. But I mean, not that some child's going to magically figure out your combination to your safe, but still, even if you wanted to, they're locked away. But I did the same thing, and the handgun that I carried every day was always on my person.
Yep.
And so it was for me personally, it was the exact same thing. I never had an issue with it. We explained to her, it was me, explained to her, this is here, you may not touch it. This is not mine. Yours. This is not for your use.
Right. Well, I'm gonna add one more thing to this whole thing, because you mentioned locks and different things like that. If you happen to own a Smith & Wesson pistol that has a key lock on the hammer system, and you know what it is if you've got one, you have the little key probably, I'm going to tell you right now, don't use that. Because you will not have, in that type of situation, the amount of dexterity required to get that little key in that little hole and turn it properly is going to be too much. I have never used any of those. I'm going to tell you that now. Actually, that's not true. I use them when they become safe queens for a while.
Yeah.
So I do lock them, throw them in the safe, and that becomes the cable lock equivalent. Although I will tell you, I think, and I could be wrong on this, but I've never had a Smith & Wesson key that didn't work on a Smith 't Wesson gun. So I don't think they're coded to the gun. So anyone who has one of those little things in their wallet can unlock any Smith & Wesson.
Before I sold my 642.
Yeah.
I lost the key to it.
So you just ordered another one or something?
So I didn't even order it. This is one thing I found incredible about Smith & Wesson, and I don't even own any Smith & Wesson guns anymore. I've had several throughout my life. I don't own any currently. I called them up, said I lost my key, and they said, "What's your address?"
They just sent it?
And they just sent it.
Okay.
I said, "What do I owe
That's
you?"
great.
And they're like, "You don't owe us anything.
Yeah,
don't worry about it." And I think they sent me one or two. They sent me two.
Cool. Just in case you lose another one.
Yeah.
But
Well, I think it originally
think
came with two, and somehow,
Okay.
or maybe it was just one. I don't remember. But I wasn't going to sell the gun, even though the trigger was unlocked. I wasn't going to sell it without the.
Right, and so but I wouldn't keep it by my bed for defensive purposes locked.
No.
It's too. That is too much to require someone in a stressful situation to try to do.
A couple cups of coffee, and I don't think I would screw with that.
Right,
key.
and a revolver is very difficult to pull the trigger on anyway, as many you know. So like I said, I use common sense. It's going to be a little bit different in different households. If you have a troubled child at home, you have to make decisions that is different than somebody who doesn't. Mm-hmm. Using cases that have actually happened recently. If you have a kid that is medicated, if that's the case, you know what I'm talking about, and that child has special needs, then maybe you need to reconsider a lot of things within your home, and maybe you need to make sure that your safe code is just yours to have, and it's not something they know, and those things are locked up properly. So I'm going to use, I think you have to use common sense and common judgment. And as many of you know, and I think our listeners, I don't worry about quite as much, but common sense ain't so common. And so sometimes really think about what you're doing and who your kids are, if that's a concern. If this is really a concern of yours going through your head, there may be a reason why it's a concern of yours going through your head, so you need to consider that a little bit more strongly.
Yeah.
And just keep that in mind for the rest of us.
Exactly. And I think for those that don't have children in their home, I think as long as you're responsible about it, and as long as when you're not there, the weapon is secured.
Yeah.
I don't personally find a reason to keep a weapon unloaded.
Yeah.
I don't see a reason for it.
We are both big proponents, by the way, of gun safes.
Yeah.
So, and I think using a gun safe properly, which means getting it bolted down the whole bit, not meaning, taking your 100-pound safe and going, oh, well, it's 100 pounds, and with the guns in it, it's a whole 250.
No. I do know somebody that had two very large, very heavy safes in their home. Mm-hmm. Those safes were stolen.
Yeah.
I mean, we were talking about safes that are bigger than most people's refrigerators.
And the answer is yes, even a bolted down safe can be stolen, but the amount of time required to do that is a lot more.
And it's a lot of equipment. But these people had bought the safes, thought, oh, they're these huge safes, nobody's getting them out, didn't bolt them down.
Right.
And somebody actually did carted them out the back door.
Yeah, because it doesn't actually take much. There's a lot of equipment out there that can do that. And so, one big guy with a dolly can get a very heavy safe out of a house. So
physics are an amazing thing.
Yeah, use it properly. I know Aaron is too. Huge proponents of gun safes. Mine are always in, like I said, a very safe place, and there's multiple barriers between anyone and my guns.
And I think to kind of go on as far as, and we were making this joke the other night about somebody you knew that bought like some crazy Porsche, but like never drove it or never did something.
Exactly.
But he had guns the same way too.
Yeah, it's the same thing. It's okay. I bought this is a guy who is not a friend of mine. I want to be clear. He's one of those guys who buys things because it impresses other people. So it's he bought for those of you who know cars, he bought a Porsche 911, but not a regular 911 Carrera 4S or something like that. He bought the 911 Track Ready Edition. And so my first question, of course, is, cool, have you taken it on a track? Oh, no, haven't done that. Taken any driving courses? No, haven't done that. Okay. Then he tells me about some other things that he's done, and it started becoming really evident that he was one of those guys who owns a lot of things but doesn't know how to use them. And one of them was he got this really tricked out, I think it was an AR-15. Mm-hmm. Totally, he's like, oh, this is the one that the Navy SEALs use. It's completely tricked out, has the laser sight system, has this, has that. So I asked the dumb question of, have you taken any of the classes from any of the guys around town who offer basically AR-15 courses, whether they be defensive or combat or whatever? And he's like, oh, no, haven't done that. I don't have the time. And I think that is, that goes back to our long-time concept of survival chi. If you're not, if you're going to buy it but not train it and know how to use it, well, then there's no point in having bought it in the first place. Mm-hmm.
It really is kind of ridiculous. I would rather see somebody buy the least expensive weapon they could and spend all that money.
Yeah.
Like if we were gonna talk few $1,000s here to spend.
Yep.
Rather than buying the $1,300 AR, I would say,
buy the $800 AR.
Buy even the $700 AR. What I don't even know. Can you get them at $700?
I don't know if you can even get. Let's just pretend. I've seen them recently at $800.
Okay, so we'll say $800 instead of buying the crazy land
or the $2,000 one,
or the $2,000. Spend all the rest of it on training.
Yeah, and you can actually get a good amount, a really good course for that kind of money.
Yeah,
you can get a good course for that kind of money, and it's worth it.
Yeah,
and when you meet people like that, you spot it pretty quickly. I mean, it tends to flow into all aspects of their lives. It wasn't just the AR-15; it was the Porsche. He owned a sailboat, but never took a sailing class. He owned a Porsche, but never took a class and how to drive it. And not just a Porsche; he got the track ready model.
Yeah.
It had the crazy seat belts and the funky lightweight seats and all that stuff. And you're like, wow, that's a really cool car, but it lives in your garage.
Mm-hmm.
That's a really cool rifle, but it lives in a safe. How is any of that useful to you? And it's not. And that's kind of, if you're going to get it, get the training.
Both from a usage and a safety standpoint, too. Get the training.
Oh, yeah.
And I think, we've talked about this it was a long time ago. I think it was one of our first episodes. We were talking about finding trainers. And, if you get one bad trainer, and what you'll find is you won't usually, I've never met anybody that was reputable that other people recommended in the firearms training world that was what I would call a moron within that realm.
Yeah.
I would call them a moron in many other realms.
They might have been a savant.
Yeah. But when it came to guns and gun safety, they were really good.
Right. They had their thing.
Yeah. And what I have found is just personality conflicts, where I just thought the person was a jerk, or I didn't like their business practices.
Yeah, but you can get other trainers.
But that's it. Yeah. It's not like it's not like going to the doctor where you have a toothache and you go to a dentist, you don't like that dentist, so you go home and try to ignore the toothache instead of go find another dentist to resolve the issue. And
same idea. Go find another trainer. Yep.
I can't stress it enough. I think both for children and adults, if you have any children. And I think one other thing is, in most cases, most parents, other than initial conversations, I think most parents should hire a professional to teach their children.
Go to Appleseed.
Yeah, go to Appleseed, especially, is a great place. And then I know the NRA has some youth stuff.
NRA has great stuff, but you know what? There's a lot of Appleseeds out there, and I can speak only for myself. I know Aaron can speak for himself. I had a great time at Appleseed. I have seen Appleseed do good things even with other people's kids, and that's impressive. And even when you look at the dad or the mom and you go, wow, that person's totally screwing with that kid, the Appleseed instructors step in and make it a better experience. Yeah. And they've always been, from everything I've seen, it's been excellent. So, and it's not just me saying that. Masad Ayub has multiple write-ups where he speaks very, very favorably about Appleseed.
Yeah.
I think he goes regularly.
Yeah, he does. And I wish I still had the time to be as involved as I was in Appleseed. It's,
I wish I had the time to train like I'm telling all of you to do. No, I'm just kidding.
So the last thing I do want to think, which is actually a safety thing, which I will admit, even I didn't really even know about this.
And like I always say, safety third.
Exactly, safety third, run with scissors.
Yes.
Which is bullet setback, which is something I really didn't know about until recently.
I had no idea until you told me about it last night. And I'd heard about it, but I didn't really know what it was.
Yeah, it's a very kind of strange thing, and I felt almost foolish that I didn't know about it. So I'm going to share it with everyone else.
Educate us.
I'm going to lay down some education, which is. So for usually at least 5 days a week, I try to dry fire with whatever handgun I'm carrying, which right now it's the Glock, and normally in the past it would have been the SIG, and before that it was an HK, and before that it was another SIG, and Jonathan's having knee issues again. And
just dancing around the room on one leg.
Hey, whatever you got to do. Wait, did you bring alcohol and you didn't tell me to this meeting?
I've been drinking the whole time.
Gosh, totally holding that on me.
Oh, you got to drive.
That's true. So. But every day I try to, or at least 5 days a week, I try to dry fire with my primary carry pistol. And in the process of that, I would eject the round that was in the chamber, put it back into the magazine, put the magazine someplace safe, double check the chamber, and proceed to dry fire. Which, for those people that are still haven't gotten the memo, unless you are using some esoteric gun or whatever else, it most likely will have absolutely, positively no impact on your firing pin.
Except for 22s.
Except
or rimfire pistols.
Rimfire pistols, 22s.
Except for the Ruger 1022. But everything else, don't dry fire.
A few older revolvers and stuff. If you have a question, call your local gunsmith, not the gun store.
But in general, any defensive pistol, minus the rimfire stuff, you're fine. Rimfire, you might need to do a little more research. Yeah. Some rimfire okay, some rimfire not. That's it. That's my disclaimer.
So, in doing this, since I carry a 357 SIG, it was a little more apparent than I think with a lot of other rounds because of the way it bottlenecks. One day I ejected the round and set it on the counter and noticed that the bullet itself looked like it had been pushed into the casing.
You had a shorty.
I did. I had a shorty, and I was like, that doesn't look right. So I stripped off another round, put it next to it, and sure enough, the round had been set back into the casing a little more than, say, 2 millimeters. I mean, it was really shoved in there. So I did a little digging, a little research, and come to find every time...
Are you packing your bullets like you do your cigarettes?
I am. Every time I was ejecting it and then racking it back off into the chamber from the magazine, I was essentially causing a little bit of bullet setback every time. Yes, I know, there was funny words there.
Off.
Yeah. So, nobody promised we would be adults today. And it was interesting, and that reminded me something of ejecting, when you see guys in the military walking into the mess hall, they'll eject the round out of their rifle into a bucket, and it was like, what are those, why do that? And then, okay, so that was actually it. Which, doing it a few times, not a big deal. Doing it multiple times, like I'd say more than probably 5. I know a lot of PD, after doing research, a lot of PDs recommend that you safely dispose of, and no, your idea of safely disposing, Jonathan, was not safe. You shouldn't just throw it in the trash.
Or shoot it at the wall.
Well, I think the point was, one of the things that happens, and probably...
Or into the bathtub.
Into the bathtub, yeah, brilliant.
Water catches the bullet.
Don't do that. We're going to go try it in film and see what happens at Jonathan's house in just a little while. But so what it actually does is, by setting the bullet back, you're actually increasing the pressure and can potentially create a blowout.
Yeah.
Which would not be pleasant at all. And I think in particular, because since the 357 SIG is such a hot round to begin with, apparently it can cause real issues with that. So I know a lot of the PDs recommend not to do this more than 3 times. And to walk it through for somebody that may be confused as to how this happens again, you load the magazine into your gun with the slide back, and you let the slide go. It then strips off around and pushes it into the chamber. In the process of hitting the feed ramp and going into the chamber, it sets the bullet back into the case.
Also remember, the chamber's on most guns a little tight.
Yeah.
So basically what you're doing is you're seating a bullet into the chamber over and over again, and after a while, you've hammered it back. Each time it's only a hair's length or a hair's width. After a bunch of times, it's not so much just a hair's width anymore, and now it's enough to have impacted the actual amount of pressure in that round, and you can cause damage to the gun, and more importantly, you can cause damage to yourself.
Yep. And it is, like I said, the round that I caught it in, thankfully I didn't shoot off that round, or hadn't been to the range recently to shoot it off. But it had pushed it back a good 2,
and a lot of people,
maybe even 3 millimeters back into the casing.
Well, and a lot of people don't practice with their defensive rounds.
Right.
So what happens is you're reseating the same round
over and over
again. You're not even like cycling them through a magazine or anything. You may be seating the exact same round for a year, every single night.
That's exactly what was happening.
And that is not good.
Yeah. And my thing was, I haven't been going to the range because I'm like, I don't want to waste any.
And when you first explained it to me, I was like, that makes perfect sense. And what's interesting is, one of the things my dad always did was he actually would cycle through defensive rounds at the range. And it was always whatever he'd had in the gun for like a week. Now, my dad went to the range a lot more than most people do. But I think it was actually once every other week he would cycle through whatever defensive round he had in that magazine.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
And that way...
It was always fresh.
It was always, And I don't know what his logic was, or if that was just a training thing or whatever. But that's what he did.
Interesting.
Yeah. And that, I guess, made it better.
Hopefully one day ammo gets cheap enough we can do that ourselves.
I would love that.
And on that, we're going to wrap up episode, I think this is 103 today. Get weekly updates about articles, episodes, and special In the Rabbit Hole announcements every Saturday morning by signing up for the newsletter through the website, intherabbithole.com. From the Lone Star State, till next time, stay safe and sound.